welcome her and pray that she can continuously join and give her kind association to our group. Thank you very much, Nitya Kishori Mataji. So we are reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta. We are on the second volume, and the chapter title is On the Bawari. By the standard of classical Vedic scholars, it takes 10 years for a boy to master Sanskrit grammar. And if one does not start until his late 20s or 30s, what to speak of 50s, 60s, 70s, it is usually too late. Haribol. Certainly, none of Swamiji's students were thinking of entering a 10-year concentration in Sanskrit grammar. And even if they were, they would not realize spiritual truth simply by becoming grammarians. Haribol. Prabhupada thought it's better to utilize his own Sanskrit scholarship in translating the verse of Srimad Bhagavatam into English, following the Sanskrit commentaries of the previous authorities. Otherwise, the secret of Krishna consciousness would remain locked away in the Sanskrit. Teaching called Yarjans, Devnagari, Sandhi, verb conjugations, and noun declensions was not going to give the people of America transcendental Vedic knowledge. Better that he utilize his proficiency in Sanskrit for translating many volumes of Bhagavatam into English for millions of potential readers. Carol Becker came from an immigrant Catholic background, and she immediately associated with Catholicism the Swami's presence as a spiritual authority and his devotional practices of chanting on beats and reciting from Sanskrit scriptures. Sometimes she would accompany Prabhupada to nearby Chinatown, where he would purchase ingredients for his cooking. He would cook daily, and sometimes Carol and others would come by to learn the secret of cooking for Lord Shri Krishna. So she explained in her own words, he used to cook with us in the kitchen, and he was always aware of everyone else's activities in addition to his own cooking. Always aware. He knew exactly how things should be. He watched everything and made sure everyone did everything correctly. He was a teacher. We used to make chapatis by hand, but then one day he asked me to get him a rolling pin. I brought my rolling pin and he appreciated it. He put subbed on rolling chapatis and supervised them very carefully. Haribol. I made a chutney for him at home. He always accepted our gifts graciously, although I don't think he ever ate them. Haribol. Perhaps he was worried we might put in something that wasn't allowed in his diet. He used to take things from me and put them in the cupboard. I don't know what he finally did with them, but I'm sure he didn't throw them away. I never saw him eat anything that I had prepared, although he accepted everything. What a glorious reciprocation. There you go. So Prabhupada held his evening meeting on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, just as he had uptown. The loft was out of the way for most of the acquaintances, and it was on the Bowery, a cluster of sleeping derelicts regularly blocked the street level entrance, and visitors would find as many as half a dozen bumps to step over before climbing the 4 flights of stairs. But it was something new. You could go and sit with a group of hip people and watch the Swami lead kirtan. The room was dimly lit, and Prabhupada would burn incense. Many casual visitors came and went. One of them, Gunther, had vivid impressions as follows. In his own words, he is describing: you walked right off the Bowery into a room filled with incense. It was quiet. Everyone was talking in hushed tones, not really talking at all. Swamiji was sitting in front of the room and in meditation. There was a tremendous feeling of peace which I have never had before. I had happened to have studied for 2 years to become a minister and was into meditation, study, and prayer. But this was my first time to do anything Eastern or Hindu. There were lots of pillows around and mats on the floor for people to sit on. I don't think there were any pictures or statues. It was just Swamiji, incense and mats, and obviously the respect of the people in the room for him. Before we went up, Carl was laughing and saying how Swami wanted everyone to use the hand symbols just correctly. I had never played this before, but when it began, I just tried to follow Swamiji, who was doing it in a certain way. Things were building up, the sound was building up, but then someone was doing it wrong, and Swamiji just very, very calmly shook a finger at someone, and they looked, and then everything stopped. He instructed this person from a distance, and this fellow got the right idea, and they started up again. After a few minutes, the sound of the cymbals and the incense, we weren't in the Bowery any longer. We started chanting Hare Krishna. That was my first experience in chanting. I had never chanted before. There is nothing in Protestant religion that comes even close to that. Maybe Catholics with their Hail Marys, but it's not quite the same thing. It was relaxing and very interesting to be able to chant. And I found Swamiji very fascinating. Very well. The loft was more open than Prabhupada's previous place uptown, so there was less privacy. And here some of the visitors were skeptical and even challenging. But everyone found him confident and joyful. He seems to have far-reaching plans, and he had dedication. He knew what he wanted to do and was single-handedly carrying it out. Quote, "It is not one man's job," unquote, he had said. But he went on doing all he could, depending on Krishna for the results. David was beginning to help, and more people were coming by to visit him. Almost all of Prabhupada's Bowery friends were musicians or friends of musicians. They were into music, drugs, women, and spiritual meditation. Because Prabhupada's presentation of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra was both musical and meditative, they were automatically interested. Prabhupada stressed that all the Vedic mantras or hymns were sung. In fact, the words Bhagavad Gita meant the song of God. But the words of the Vedic hymns were incarnation of God in the form of transcendental sound. The musical accompaniment of hands, drums, harmonium was just that, an accompaniment, and had no spiritual purpose independent of the chanting of the name of God. Prabhupada allowed any instrument to be used as long as it did not detract from the chanting. I remember sometime we have a home program, and before, if he forgot some kartals and all that, we used to get the plate and the rolling pin and bang it on this to make some sound, have some company of the transcendental sound with the holy name. Prabhupada allowed any instrument to be used as long as it did not detract from the chanting. So Carol is explaining in her own words, it was a very interracial, music-oriented scene. There were a few professional musicians and a lot of people who enjoy playing or just listening. Holy name is so wonderful. Some people were painting in some of the lofts, and that's basically what was going on. We had memorable kirtans. One time there was a beautiful ceremony, and some of us went over early to prepare for it. There must have been 100 people who came that day. Haribol. For the Babri crowd, sound was spirit and spirit was sound, in a merging of music and meditation. But for Prabhupada, music without the name of God wasn't the meditation. It was sense gratification, or at most, a kind of stylized impersonal meditation. But he was glad to see the musician coming to play along in his kirtan, to hear him and to chant responsively. Some, having stayed up all night playing somewhere on their instrument, would come by in the morning and sing with the Swami. Haribol. See, when the materialistic people get so much taste, rather than sleeping, they will come early morning to chant with Prabhupada. Sleep is the something that we need to get rid of slowly and slowly. It's not required that much. He did not dissuade them from their focus on sound. Rather, he gave them sound. In the Vedas, sound is said to be the first element of material creation. The source of sound is God, and God is eternally a person. Prabhupada emphasis was on getting people to chant God's personal, transcendental name. Whether they took it as jazz, folk music, rock music, or Indian meditation made no difference, as long as they began to chant Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. So Carol is explaining her experience that whenever he had the chanting, the people were fairly in awe of the Swami. On the Babri, a kind of transcendence came out of the ringing of the kartals. He used the harmonium and many people played these kartals. Sometimes he played the drum. In the very beginning, he stressed the importance of sound and the realization of Godhead through the sound. That was, I suppose, the attractions that this musician found in him. The emphasis on the sound as a means to attaining transcendence and the Godhead. But he wanted a serious thing. He was interested in discipleship. One serious newcomer was Michael Grant, Mukund Maharaj. Mike was a 24, and his father, who was Jewish, owned a record shop in Portland, Oregon, Haribo, where Mike grew up. After studying music at Portland's Reed College and at San Francisco State, Mike, who played the piano and many other instruments, moved to New York City along with his girlfriend, hoping to get into music professionally. But he quickly became disenchanted with the commercial music scene, playing in nightclubs and pandering to commercial demands seemed particularly unappealing. In New York, he joined the Musicians Union and worked as a musical arranger and as an agent for several local groups. Mike lived on the Bowery in an AIR loft on Grand Street. It was a large loft where musicians often congregated for jam sessions. But as he turned more and more to serious composing, he found himself retiring from the social side of the music scene. His interest ran more to the spiritual, quasi-spiritual, and mystical books he had been reading. He had encountered several swamis, yogis, and self-styled spiritualists in the city and had taken up Hatha Yoga. From his first meeting with the Swami, Mike was interested and quite open, as he was with all religious persons. He thought all genuinely religious people were good, although he did not care to identify with any particular groups. So Mike is explaining in his own word, that's Mukund Maharaj. There was a little bit of familiarity because I had seen other swamis. The way he was dressed, the way he looked, older and swarthy, were new to me. But at the same time, there was an element of novelty. I was very curious. I didn't hear him talk when I first came in. He was just chanting. But mainly, I was waiting to hear what he was going to say. I had already heard people chant before. I thought, why else would he put himself in such a place without any comforts, unless the message he is trying to get across is more important than his own comfort. I think the thing that struck me the most was the poetry that was all around him, poverty. This was curious because the places that I had been before had been just the opposite, very opulent. There was a Vedanta center in Upper Manhattan and others. They were filled with staid older men with their leather chairs and pipe tobacco, that kind of environment. But this was real poverty. The whole thing was curious. The Swamiji looked very refined. which was also curious that he was in this place, being a gentleman. When he taught, I immediately saw that he was a scholar, and then he spoke with great conviction. Some statements he made were very daring. He was talking about God, and this was all new. To hear someone talk about God, I always wanted to hear someone I could respect talk about God. I always liked to hear religious speakers, but I measured them very carefully. When he spoke, I began to think, quote, well, here is someone talking about God who may really have some realization of God, unquote. He was the first one I had come across who might be a person of God, who could feel really deeply. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada is so pure. Prabhupada is lecturing. Sri Krishna is just trying to place Arjuna on the platform of working in pure consciousness. We have already discussed for so many days that we are not this dull body, but we are consciousness. Somehow or other, we are in the contact with matter. Therefore, our freedom is checked. And this is what we will be reading at 3:30, and I highly recommend, if possible, join at 3:30. Just step up a little your devotion. We will be reading 4 chapters from Manahasiksha. Chapter 4, 5, 6, and 7. That will give us the hidden motive that we have for material attachment. And our Acharya is so kind to us to reveal to us. So then we will be able to see those mentality within our mind and heart by reading those 4 verses. It may go on for maybe 2-3 months at least. But I think it's worthwhile to hear those wonderful instructions on how to see the lingering effect of material attachments. Attendance is better now than it had been uptown. The loft offers a larger space. In fact, the platform where Prabhupada sits nearly equals the area of his entire office cubicle on 72nd Street. Today I didn't see the recording has been posted on our group, 3:30 meditation. Maybe the our admins can look into it to post that as soon as possible. The dingy loft with its unpainted rafters is more like an old warehouse than a temple. The member of his audience, most of them musicians, have come to meditate on the mystical sounds of the Swami's Kirtan. Carl, Carol, Gunther, Mike, David, the crowd from the Paradox, and others join him on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night, when he holds classes beginning punctually at 8 o'clock. Punctually, Prabhupada. All these great personalities, they are really punctual. And we need to learn from those personalities to become punctual in everything we do in our life. The program consists of half an hour of chanting Hare Krishna, followed by a lecture from Bhagavad Gita, usually 45 minutes long, then a question and answer period, and finally another half hour for chanting, everything ending by 10 o'clock. The Kirtan has just ended and Swamiji is speaking. As spiritual beings, we are free to act, free to have anything pure, no contamination, no disease, no birth, no death, no old age. And beside that, we have got many other qualifications in our spiritual life. Very good. When he speaks, his pure spiritual form. The Vedic scriptures say that a sadhu, a saint, is not seen but heard. If the people in the audience want to know Swamiji, they will have to hear him. He is no longer simply the old Indian immigrant who lives on the other side of the partition of this block, hanging his clothes to dry, barely getting his nose. But now he is speaking as an emissary of Lord Krishna, beyond time and space, and hundreds of spiritual masters in the change of disciplic succession are speaking through him. He has entered amid New York's bohemians in 1966, saying that 1966 is temporary and illusory, that he is eternal and they are also eternal. This was the meaning of the Kirtan. And now he is explaining it philosophically, advocating a total change in consciousness, yet knowing that they can't take it at all, he urges them to take whatever they can. Hari Bol. You will be glad to hear that this process of spiritual realization, once begun, guarantees one to have his next life as a human being. Other karma yoga is begun, it will continue. It doesn't matter. Even if one fails to complete the course, still he is not loser. He is not loser. Now, if someone begins this yoga of self-realization, but unfortunately cannot prosecute this task in a nice way, means if he falls down from the path, still there is encouragement that you are not a loser. You will be given a chance next life. And the next life is not ordinary next life. And for one who is successful, oh, what to speak of him. The successful goes back to Godhead. So we are holding this class, and although you have multifarious duties, you come here thrice a week and try to understand. And this will not go in vain. Even if you stop coming here, that impression will never go away. I tell you, the impression will never go. If you do some practical work, that is very nice. But even if you do not do any practical work, simply you give your submission, oral reception, and understand what is the nature of God. If you simply hear and have an ideas even, then you will be free from this material bondage. So this is the process that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us. Simply by hearing the transcendental sound vibration. If we are not properly pronouncing the Mahamantra, how this transcendental sound vibration will cleanse the illusion, ignorance from our heart? Never will. But if we become attentive to hear this transcendental sound vibration very attentively, then you will see your mind doesn't go anywhere. I always give an example of my life that in the beginning I used to carry very small, like a 2 inches, like a notepad. And I used to buy a pencil, but I will cut it in 4 parts, so it's become very small. So I can stick into my pocket and nobody can even see it. And when I start chanting, I will keep that diary on my left hand. Whenever my mind goes away, I used to put a dot. And when I finished the 16th round, the whole diary was filled up with the dots. So I was wondering, where is that? Well, where the mind is. Mind is going everywhere. I didn't read at that time, neither I heard from anyone. But it's something came in my heart that become more focused and see, catch your mind when your mind is going somewhere. So I become really attentive to see. And my realization was that when we become little inattentive, you are giving a chance for the mind to go away. If you really focus to listen the holy name very effectively and attentively, there is no way your mind will go anywhere. So this is something is really profound, that how to control the mind when we chant the holy name is hear it with rapt attention, and slowly those dots was decreasing on the piece of paper, and I was feeling so good that somehow or other Krishna gave me the recipe how to get over with this difficult to control the mind. So this is something very nice to meditate. It's 6:55. As Prabhupada says, we should be very punctual in our practices. So we'll stop here. And before all the devotees leave,